We're talking about changing education forever, and so I'm gonna show, not tell, because that's the best education, right? I'm gonna actually introduce you to and share a video of a good friend, Jeff Hamilton, who is a math teacher in New York City public schools, and won this beautiful award, and they did this really nice feature in his classroom. So I wanna take you into his classroom to see how he really designs a classroom for contribution, not just consumption. I want this video to be A, useful to you, and B, an ode and a compliment and a hug to education. Because I think I've noticed that people outside of education give a bad rap to everything that's happening in schools. Of like, let's just sit and get old style of education, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, like that might have been how your school was, but there's a lot of teachers doing a lot of really amazing things, creating and designing their classrooms for contribution and engagement and learning important skills, life skills that are going to be used outside the classroom. We're not still living 100% in the era where schools were created to teach people how to work in a factory, right? We've evolved quite a bit, and I think it's about time that we start giving credit where credit is due. And so I want to share an example of Jeff, and I'll pop in throughout a couple times to introduce some ideas and concepts that you can ruthlessly steal and apply into your own schools and districts and classrooms. Jeff Hamilton, everybody.
In my mathematics classes, I like to have an environment where students are constantly communicating with one another. And when they have questions, they turn to one another. While sometimes it gets a little loud, it's a lot of fun. I have some students who joke with me on a regular basis that they should be the ones getting paid and not me. And I like when they think that, because to them, from their point of view, it looks like they're doing all of the math, and they're doing all of the teaching, and they're doing all of the supporting one another, and they're doing all the finding out without me telling them, and I think that's how it should be.
Quick pause. Do you notice that none of Jeff's students are sitting down? Right? There's all this movement happening, is using space around the room, and that's the first idea that I think you can steal from Jeff, is use space. There's some really cool ways, right? If I say, this wall, it represents introversion, and this wall represents extroversion. This is how I would define introversion: people who gain energy from being alone. Extroversion, gain energy by being with people. Can you stand where you would fall on this spectrum? Just self-identify. So you have 30 students get up and move around and shift. So you get this visual map. You're actually using the physical space. Now you can do that for any continuum. That was just an example there. You could use this for any continuum of your content, right? So if you're teaching a public speaking course, on a scale of I feel totally comfortable public speaking to I'm terrified and I really don't want to be in this class, can you stand where you'd fall on that spectrum? And you get everybody moving. The magic of that is you have people vote with their feet. A student, especially who's kind of self-conscious and figuring out who they are in the world, does not want to be caught dead standing in the wrong place. And so just by involving that movement creates a much more dynamic, using your brain actively rather than just passively sitting and taking notes.
Task, when do you switch the marker? When you hear the bell go off, okay?
I recently read a book about building thinking classrooms in mathematics, so I'd like to think that I have a thinking classroom now. So you come to my mathematics classes, you'll see students standing for nearly the entire hour. You'll see them in different groups every day, and you'll see them working on various tasks posted around the room.
Okay, have you been noticing how Jeff is speaking in sentences that end in question marks, not periods? Or maybe even worse, in an educational context, oh my goodness, ducking and dodging. Speaking in sentences that end in exclamation points, right? Commands, do this, don't do this, stop talking, start doing this, right? I wish I could right now turn this into a question mark, and I can't do that. I should probably get a foam question mark, shouldn't I? As educators, when you think about your lesson planning from the perspective of how many questions have I built into this lesson today? How many questions have I posed that invite students into discussion with each other? How many questions have I posed that students can work or answer that question, journal out their responses in a more introvert-friendly way, and then share them with a partner, right? Fundamentally, when you speak in sentences that end in question marks, you've designed your learning for contribution, not just consumption, which is really good. Because when you've got students who are on their phones and they're really addicting and they're very, very stimulating, right? It's impossible to compete with that as an educator. And so what I would invite is don't, because the phone is filled with consumption. Lots of consumption. Scroll, 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 scroll. Video, 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 video. Picture, 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 right? When you design content for contribution, you stop competing in the land of consumption. It's like, it almost like makes my body relax when I think about that. It's like, whew, it's a little, you don't have to be as intense.
When my students have the opportunity to come in and choose a card, and that card determines what group they're in, they get very excited. There's a lot of excitement built around what group am I going to be in today? What board am I going to be at in the room? And am I going to be on a window group? All of these things together sort of help students take ownership of their learning. And with so much support, when students realize how much support there is from their peers around them, it really helps raise everybody up.
We have students from all over the world, so every incoming class is 50% mainstream students, 50% English language learners, and we seek out diversity. So we generally have about 30 languages in our student body.
In my opinion, multi-language learners should be talking as much as possible during every class. And this structure really provides that opportunity for them. There are multiple languages spoken in the classroom. And so when students have to work with other students who don't speak their language, it forces them to do their best to communicate with one another in a common language. You know, whether that language is color coding on the board, which I love to see when students grab different colored markers to try to explain their thinking to a student who doesn't speak their language, or if that language is in showing their math, or if that language is in trying to speak English. I think this approach is really helpful.
Okay, can you notice right now how Jeff is designing a remarkably engaging classroom, but he's pretty composed, right? He's just walking around the room. He's not doing anything crazy. I was actually leading a workshop for 120 faculty at a university that I worked with over the course of 2 years. And this one guy, easily the tallest faculty member, he was felt like 7 feet. He was probably like 6'7". Intimidating guy comes up to me, and you could just tell during my session, he's just kind of scowling like this. And he comes up to me afterward and he says, "What are you trying to teach us here, Chad? These ingredients for engagement. You want me to stand up and dance like a monkey? If a student doesn't want to learn, they don't want to learn. It's not my job to make them want to learn." I just took a deep breath and in my head said, "Well, actually, it kind of is your job." I didn't actually say that to him, but the idea that I picked out was, he's misinterpreted what I was saying. When I talk about designing learning to be more engaging, when I talk about designing your presentations to be more engaging, I am not talking about standing on the desk at the front of the room and dancing like a monkey to entertain someone. So on a continuum from entertainment to flat out stand in the front of the room and present a PowerPoint education, I'm not saying be on this end. I'm also saying that if you're on this end, you're going to lose your energy, your students' attention, your grades, right? So to be clear, it's totally not about tricks and tactics to spark your students' attention and compete with the likes of TikTok. The goal is actually to be really smart in the way that you're designing your flow of education.
So when you're working in a thinking classroom, you have to have every single step of the way planned. You have to know what your questions are going to be. And it has to be much more calculated than what a traditional classroom is, where you're just showing the students. Especially in the beginning, it takes a lot of time to develop these skills. And it's also frustrating because the students are not used to this type of work, and they just want to sit down and copy notes. And so in this type of a classroom, it's so different and so much more rigorous, so much more thinking, so much more exploration. And you can't just throw a problem at a kid and say, do it. You have to know what the steps are to be able to ask the questions to get them to the place that they need to be on their own.
I have some students who joke with me on a regular basis that they should be the ones getting paid and not me. And I like when they think that, because to them, from their point of view, it looks like they're doing all of the math, and they're doing all of the teaching, and they're doing all of the supporting one another, and they're doing all the finding out without me telling them, and I think that's how it should be.
So we're going to do -5. So this is -2. Yeah. So -5 times 3.
Will it matter if it's negative?
No, we change it negative later.
Oh, okay.
He's really been a voice in the teaching community to promote thinking about our instruction and how to further it.
People are seeing just the value in the way that he runs his classroom, and they want to emulate that. And he's very respected, and the students love him. So why not try this thing that's working for him?
Okay, I haven't met Wanda, and I'm sure she's an amazing human being. And with all the love in my heart, I'm going to disagree slightly with Wanda. I think it can be very hard to design education for contribution, right? Designing a classroom that has this much experiential learning happening in it could be really difficult. However, I don't think it has to be. And for me, I've noticed that there are 5 particular ingredients that if you drip any one of them into any sort of learning, it increases engagement. If you incorporate all 5 of them, the entire session's remapped for engagement. And so when I actually go to design my own workshops or my own keynotes, I literally write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a piece of paper, and I just make a couple notes about each of those ingredients. And so that's how I lesson plan, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, map it out. If you want to know what those 5 ingredients are, you'll really love this video on how to encourage active participation. It's one of my favorite videos where I do the too long didn't read version of those 5 ingredients for engagement. I'm Chad. Have an awesome day.